Good morning. Well, they say that you can't go back. But 5 years ago, when I was invited for my first summer at the maternal PKU camp in Wisconsin, I found out that you can go back. When I was getting the details of the camp, they said, oh yeah, we hold it right on campus in Madison. Well, I went to school in Madison, and lo and behold, we stayed in the very dorm that I spent all 4 years at Madison in. So I was, undergrad, and then I was involved with the dorm government, and then the last year I was even an RA. So I knew all the little secret rooms, and it was such a thrill for me. Our main meeting room was the old TV room. In those days, everybody didn't have their own TV in their room. So, 80 girls would go and watch The Way We Were. Am I dating myself or what? And then there was the small group breakout times. We had them in the old passion pits. The little dens, you guys know. So memories were flooding over. Well, it wasn't until the very last night of camp, and another group was going to be using the same dorm. And it was the freshman orientation group with their parents. And they were going through our hallway to get to their hallway, and all of a sudden this guy starts lingering outside my room and chatting a little bit, and he had seen me with the girls. And I'm going, oh man, this guy is hitting on me. And I thought, and then I just quickly dropped this line, like, well, I attended this university the year before you were born. And he exited promptly. And I thought, yes, you can go back. So it was fun for me at camp, and it is just wonderful to be back here with you. So many familiar faces for me. And I hope it's equally exciting to be back here. I left the clinic very abruptly at the University of Illinois 14 and a half years ago. I cleaned out my desk one morning, and in the afternoon I went to pick up my new daughter at the time. And so we're family by adoption. But that day, which I'll always remember, was preceded by months and months of work with caseworkers and infertility specialists and all these things. Am I getting too much feedback here, Dr. Wong?
No, it's just running louder.
Oh, okay. So it was preceded by months of that, and in part of the meeting with our caseworker, we were taught the language of adoption. And this was an important thing, because whenever there's something a little bit different in your family, people are very curious about that. They're very curious, and they ask questions. And then sometimes people really want to reach out and help. And then sometimes it's important to have those words that you can fall back on any time, because there are people in this world, and even though they don't wake up that morning and say, I'm going to be a jerk today, they are, and they ask really stupid, hurtful questions or say hurtful things. So it's helpful to have those words. And it's helpful for you as parents of children who have PKU to have words that you can give them, that you can teach them, so that they can deal with all those curious people, those people that may want to help, and those people who are jerks that day. So let's talk a little bit about talking about PKU. We're getting back to basics, and it seems like from the day you get that phone call from the clinic, you're talking about PKU, and you'll talk about it for the rest of your life. So let's talk about talking about and how you can help kids. There's three areas that your kids, I think, would benefit from being able to talk about PKU. And one is just responding to questions. And Jonathan mentioned being able to answer a real quick answer, or some other people mentioned the short answer. And if you open up your folders, and there's a packet of papers, and the first paper is not the paper we're going to look at first. If you can look at the one that has, I was plugged in there. That says on the tip of your tongue. These are phrases that I've worked up in a curriculum for the University of Wisconsin. that are in response to typical questions that kids are going to get. Can everybody find that? Just show me that you, raise your hand if you've got that packet and you're on the same page with me. Good, we're on the same page, good. A typical question that a child with PKU is going to get is, why are you eating that? With an emphasis on the that. That can happen sometimes. Or, why don't you eat meat? Here are two quick and easy short answers. I'm a vegetarian. That would be the very short answer. There is no opportunity here for a huge biochemical discussion. When you say, I'm a vegetarian, right? You got it covered. Why don't you I'm following a special diet. Now, that's inviting another question, isn't it? And there are people in your life that you want to make that invitation, or you want to remind them, oh yeah, you're on a special diet. I don't know if this happened to you. You can explain the diet in the whole regimen in great detail to someone, and 6 months later, they completely forgot. Now, why is that? It might be your own mother. And you've gone through all of this, and she got caught on the fact that, oh my gosh, my grandchild's going to have to count every French fry all their life. And didn't hear anything else after you said that. So there's some people you just have to remind a little. So that little comment, I'm following a special diet, is a nice reminder type word. Another question is, why do you eat this way? And if the child or you say, I'm following special diet, then the first thing people think of is weight loss diet. And, well, you don't need a diet. Or, what's all that about? And very simple responses, I have PKU, it stands for. And this is something that you may or may not want to have your child say or instruct them to say, but I think it's very empowering for your child to be able to say that very, very big word, phenylketonuria. It's hard. But you know what? So is, Tyrannosaurus Rex, and they work out that, They work out the big words, and sometimes it's very cool to be able to say a big word. They don't have to say it every time they're responding to someone, but I think an important thing for your child to be able to say is what PKU stands for, because otherwise, the next question is, what is PKU? And they go, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as they cannot respond, other kids smell fear a mile away, right? And they'll go, well, and then you're opening up an opportunity for teasing or other problems. So I think that as matter of fact as you can, I have PKU, it stands for. Sometimes kids want to know, well, how long have you had it? What is this all about? Can I, when did this start? It's kind of in the vein of, you mean you've never had a hamburger, your whole life. And in fact, we were surprised that these four up here. You never, ever tried it in all your life. I had it since I was born, and then those questions that come with, oh my gosh, you've never had pizza, you've never had whatever. It's no big deal. Did we see that attitude up here? We did. It's no big deal. This is how I eat. Now, these are really helpful things to be able to say. Now, if you have older kids, you may have worked out some of these things. And if it's working for your family, great. Then use those words and practice those. But if you haven't worked out some of these things, go ahead and try these kind of phrases to enable your kids to ward off what could be an opportunity for teasing. So handling questions carefully. Another area that it's helpful for your kids to be able to respond to is in the area of saying no. And here on this sheet I have saying no with style. Your kids are going to have to refuse food all the time. Now, I can think of some really impolite ways of refusing food. No, I'm stuffed. Or, I never eat anything that had a face. Anything like that. They get reactions, but I wouldn't recommend those on a regular basis. But being respectful, being matter of fact, being polite, I think is the best way for your kids just to sail through all these food adventures that they're going to meet up with. So some typical, would you like more chips? No, thank you. No, thank you always works. And I was at a camp and I was working with little, at Maine and I was working with little kids. We just practiced that. No, thank you. No, thank you. Period. Oh. I mean, they don't have to say, because I have PKU and I can't have more chips and I have to count this many chips every time. No! No, thank you. It's very, very adequate. It's polite. It's respectful. How about the waitress? I mean, the waitress thing is huge, right? She wants to know, aren't you going to order anything else? Don't you want whatever with that? No, thank you. I'm satisfied. This is enough, you know. That's enough. Over and over again, I guess I hear that one of the pitfalls that parents have is saying too much. Almost on any occasion. I'm the same way. And Sarah Foster, who was here moderating, recently wrote into the listserv, Pierre, the guy in France, who was asking for adult things. And she said, one of the things that would drive me crazy was when my parents went on this whole big thing with every waitress that we went, you know, that we encountered. And a simple no thank you is very, very good. I just made some chocolate chip cookies. Would you like some? Now, here, this is kind of the reminder. No, thank you. No, thank you. It's not on my diet. This is for your really well-intentioned neighbor, you know, sister, whoever, who forgets. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So just add that little bit. It's not on my diet. This is for the person who knows, but forgets. And then there's the new friends. And those are the people who you may want to invest a little bit more discussion time on what this whole PKU story is about. If it looks like this is going to be a brand new next door neighbor and you have kids the same age, it's worth investing the time to go through that whole PKU story. And that's where either for your, you know, if you're the ambassador for your child or for your child's sake, no thanks, I can't eat that because it's not on my diet, and then you can launch into your rehearsed words. So these are some helpful words to use. Again, modify for what works for your family. The third area that I think is helpful to have words ready for is when asking about food, and that's, I think, the first page in your packet. And it's called You Ask the Questions. In addition to refusing foods regularly, a lot of times your children will have to ask questions about what's in something. And again, this can be done really in a way that makes your kid either really aggressive or, you know, turns people off or makes them feel defensive, or it's very polite, matter of fact, people are happy to answer. Some lead-ins for that. It's not the lead-in here. I'm going to tell you what it doesn't say. It doesn't say, I have PKU and I can't eat blah, blah, blah. Does it have this? The lead-in is, I'm curious. Does this have cheese in it? Does this have milk in it? I'm wondering. Oh, this looks delicious. I'm wondering if it has some milk in it. You know, those kind of complimentary, this isn't rocket science, and probably a lot of you have figured this out. But having these words that your children can use can ease their way every step of the way. Sometimes it helps to say, I'm following a special diet. That gets people's attention and they may answer in a more specific way. I'm a vegetarian and I'm wondering. These are all lead-ins. And then here's the big word. I'm allergic to certain foods. I was wondering if. Now, I use allergic with caution. And I've changed my mind about it several times. So you guys are free to do the same thing. Allergic, to me, if you say you're allergic but you have PKU, you're not telling the truth. And so I had trouble with that. But then Chris Troms, who is a dietitian in Washington State, she was here, I want to say about 5 years ago. She said, Linda, wake up. We have social conventions of words that we use all the time. I asked, Dr. Wong, how are you? And he's going to say, I am
Fine.
He's fine. Now, he could be dying of cancer here, but he's going to say to me, a stranger, I am fine. He's not dying of cancer, I hope, but he could be not fine. Is he telling a lie? No, he's following a social convention. So back to that allergic word. I think work it out in your family. If you have a kid who's in the, I would say, those really literal years, 4th grade, 5th grade, even up to 8th grade, where, are any of you there in those grades? And they're so literal, you misspeak one little thing, they're all over you. Then allergic is probably not the word, because it's wrong, it's not right. But if you have a high schooler or even a younger kid and you talk about that you're not lying, work that out in your family. Allergic works for a lot of people. It doesn't work for some. But I wanted to address that allergic word. I'm curious now. How many of you use, or in your family, use the word allergic when explaining PKU? Anybody? So, about a quarter. Anybody never used the word allergic? About the same number. Great. You guys, and you can struggle with it all you want. If it works for you and communicates what you need to do and allows your child or children to do it with confidence, go for it. Okay, so you have your little lead-in. I'm curious, and then you ask the question. Matter of fact, is there aspartame? Is there NutraSweet? Is there, tofu? Whatever is in this. Is this made with milk? That might be a good thing to ask about, for mashed potatoes in a restaurant. Is there milk in this? What are the ingredients of this? So a natural, polite lead-in, asking the question, and then the follow-up. Now the follow-up is pretty key for the closure on that polite, respectful response. Well, say, well then I can't ever eat any of that. I mean, that's not what you want to say. But just something like, oh, I'm sorry, I won't be able to eat that. Oh, I'll have this instead. If it is a drink with aspartame, I'll have a glass of water. That's always an option. Thanks for finding out for me. I'd like some of that if it's going to work. Always politeness. Now, I think, and remind your kids, and this is at the bottom of your little sheet, people are asking for special foods all the time in restaurants. Put this on the side. This is with butter. Broil it, something. Your kids can do that too. It's fine. It's fine, and it doesn't need to be embarrassing. Now, it may seem kind of weird to practice these with your kids. Oh, this seems so, school life. But you know what? We practice certain words with our kids all the time. They meet another adult, and you teach them to say, glad to meet you, nice to meet you. You teach them to say bless you after someone sneezes. You teach them to say thank you and please and all the time. And just like I think Leah said it so nicely, you take care of yourself, you brush your teeth, you mix your formula, you drink it. I think these kind of words are just added to a child's repertoire, the vocabulary of PKU. It's just part of the yes, please and thank you. These kind of words. Now, what about you guys? How do you talk about PKU with people? I think we have 2 booklets, or is it just one, Jim, that everybody got when they walked in? Did you guys get T-Rex, PKU, and C? No, but you got...
I have copies for our workshop. I have about 30 copies.
Okay. Hazel just said there are copies. This is a book that I worked up again for the University of Wisconsin, and this was worked up for 5 to 7-year-olds. And I do not ever want to replace Why is Mary on a Diet? But I think we feared that it wasn't going to be available forever. So let me just read a little bit of this for you. I did not put it on overhead. This is very, very simple language for the 5 to 7-year-old, but you could go younger. It's probably also very good for some young cousins and other people in your lives. So first picture is a picture of a dinosaur. And it says this dinosaur has a long name, Tyrannosaurus rex. That's why there's a short name for it, T-Rex. And then we have our two friendly dinosaurs that keep showing up on every page. They're the Brontosaurus and the T-Rex. Brontosaurus is so long, I wish I had a short name. Triceratops is long too, but I like it. And that's for kids who like saying those long words. And then it goes into the PKU. You have a disorder with a long name, phenylketonuria, and then there is the phonetics pronunciation for it. Because it doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it? It's a little tricky. Call it PKU for short. Now this Triceratops says, well, it's a lot easier to say than phenylketonuria. Can you say phenylketonuria? So practice this. It's an opportunity to practice that long word. PKU is something you were born with. Oh, isn't that's just a simple phrase. Those of you with young children, that's a word that you can, just a simple, PKU is something you were born with. You can't catch it from someone or give it to somebody or like a cold or the flu. But Brontosaurus says, but don't sneeze on me anyways, okay? Because you're PKU, you can't use phenylalanine. And then, Brontosaurus goes, oh no, not another long name. And he was right. I bet there's a short name for it called Phe. Phe is in food. Okay, in this book, there's no mention of protein. You just talk about Phe. You probably talk about Phe in your families with your little kids. And protein can be a concept that comes later. Some families like to talk about protein and how it relates to Phe right away. In this book, we opted not to. Having PKU means your body cannot use Phe from food in the usual way. Now, this is a really good sentence for you to explain to anybody who does not have advanced degrees in biochemistry. PKU means that your body cannot use Phe from food in the usual way. You don't have to talk about enzymes. You don't even have to say the word tyrosine after phenylalanine. You can just say it. But too much Phe can hurt you. And that's true. These are all simple, truthful things. The other thing is this book, I won't read through the whole thing. We don't talk about enzymes, but we talk about what Phe does do. Phe is first used for growing and working. Everybody needs it for their bodies to grow and work. And then the second thing that happens in someone who doesn't have PKU, it's changed in the liver. We just say it's changed. There's no leftover Phe. And then Brontosaurus says, I hate leftovers. And then it shows what happens in PKU. Phe still goes for growing and working, but Phe does not get changed. It builds up. And if there's too much Phe that's eaten, there's too much leftover Phe. From these simple books, you can get green vocabulary that you want to use with people who want the short story. So even though it's a child's book, Hazel's 30 copies, and
they're in our workshop, but then we don't have enough for all of them.
Right. But if you think that would be useful, find Hazel and get that. Now, if you need a little bit more advanced language for the person or the child you're talking to, there's a book called The Story of Phe, of Me and Phe. And it just goes through similar things. But we go a notch higher. And what I'm going to show you here is the website where you can download these books until December 31st. It's www.wisc.edu/PKU/index. You can write it down. The thing that this does is give just a little bit more advanced language, again, for you to use with your acquaintances, with your extended family. Here, we introduce the idea of protein, and that protein is made up of a long chain of amino acids. And glean whatever you can from these books. These you all have. That's why it's on page 7. So we start talking about protein and that it's a part of protein. And that when you eat on page 8, the protein gets broken down to something called amino acids. We introduced that word, amino acids. And then how the liver and the body takes those broken apart amino acids to build new protein. It's a little bit more advanced, and you may find that that's more satisfying language for you to use with certain acquaintances. Then there's 2 other books. So this was designed for like 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. If you have high schoolers, well, middle schoolers, there's one on the website called Give Me the Fee Facts. And then finally, for high schoolers, PKU, Facts for Now, Facts for the Future. And it challenges a little bit more decision-making based on what's known. For example, in this last book, Facts About Too Much Fee on page 8. We don't just say it changes the way your brain works, but we go into some of the moodiness, some of the changes that have been documented in terms of harder to concentrate, harder to remember, harder to plan and organize your work. These are all consequences of high levels. So much more specific than just that general topic. Now, everybody you run into and need to talk about PKU, you don't need to go into that detail. But there may be some trusted friends that you would want to. So please, access these books if you think that they will be helpful for you for explaining PKU to the myriad of people that you meet in your life. All right. In the back to basics, let's talk a little bit about day-to-day routines. And I think our panel gave us some great insights into what goes on day-to-day. I think one of the things that's hard and sometimes onerous for families on a day-to-day basis is the keeping track of food techniques. And there are a lot of good ones that are brought out on the listserv regularly. I think a visual for young children, I know Dee has worked out some for your daughter in the past. Anything that's a visual that can be removed or and put back on often helps. For the curriculum, we have a tree. We have a feed tree. And the leaves can fall down in spring. They can go back up or however you want to do it. But each leaf represents a measured amount of feed, either in exchange or sometimes it's helpful for even, if someone has a huge tolerance, maybe 50 milligrams a leaf. For those with very small tolerances, it might be 10 milligrams a leaf, or whatever works for your family. Other families have used whiteboards, and they jotted down. When I worked in the clinic, my favorite kind of diet records to get would be the color-coded ones, where the mother would write in one color all the foods that were eaten, and then in another color the formula and the ounces drunk. And then, because I didn't have to do any work, it was just marvelous. But sometimes those parents are so adept at keeping track and monitoring. They're the accountant types. We know and love. We all have people we know and love like that. But they can do it in their head in no time. And so by the time the child is 5 or 6, sometimes that really important skill is not transferred over. And so as much as you can make it hands-on, I think is good. I know one family that used a whiteboard or a chalkboard, especially when communicating foods that the child ate away from the family. And this is helpful. So my kids are in this age. I have a 12 and a 14-year-old, where sometimes less talking is better, especially accountability talking. And so if there's one less, what did you eat when you were with so-and-so, that needs to be said in a day, that can be really good for a family, I think. So having a board where this boy would just come in and write down, an apple and or, a small bag of Lay's, or whatever he ate, that was written down, and that mother and son did not have to have that confrontation over food. Just a hint. Margie, you're going like this. Do you do something like that? Do you?
I'm laughing about one less confrontation.
We have a lot of, yeah, Ruth's going. There's some veteran parents here, and we talk about food a lot. And so if you can, in a trusting atmosphere, have that way to communicate, it really does help. Let's see, another form that worked really well for a family, and it was the Craig family, and some of you know them. They lost their son to cancer, but Lois is a great mom, and I'm sorry I'm doing this. But she had worked up when Andrew was quite young, just a check off of his favorite foods. And again, there wasn't all this onerous writing going on. She knew that he chose between 5 breakfast cereals, basically. And she revised this, but then he could just check off, and the amounts were written in the typical amount that he would have for breakfast. And again, instead of all this, 3/4 cup kits, he could just check it off, or put 2 if that day he had a cup and a half. And so that made that whole record keeping so much easier. But they did it, it was something you could do every day. She copied off a whole bunch of those, and it really worked for this family. Very organized, and a family that was well worth knowing. Formula mixing. Formula mixing is something that has to be done nearly every day. Leah worked out a way to do it every other day. I thought that was pretty good. Formula mixing can be a point of resentment, I think, at times, and so it's important to look at that every once in a while. So one handout I gave you was something called Giving Mixing a Second Thought. Now, those of you who are mixing formula for infants and toddlers, you can sit back. For those of you who are mixing for school-aged kids, middle schoolers, who not only appreciate the fact that don't appreciate the fact that you may be mixing their formula for them, but may have comments about the way that you mix it. You may want to give mixing a second thought. So just to think through, who's mixing? Who's mixing this up? Is everyone satisfied with this arrangement? Now, if the dad is mixing it every day and he doesn't mind, great. I would say that's good. Keep it up. Even if that child is in high school. Margie, can I quote you? I think about 8 years ago in one of these groups, we were talking about mixing formula. And at the time, you must have had new white carpeting, and you made a declaration that Maggie was never going to mix formula in your house while that white carpeting existed. Now, I've seen Maggie at camp. We are good buddies. And you know what? She can mix her formula just fine. But at home, does she mix it at home?
Now she does. She just started. She's 15 and she just started.
And do you have new carpeting? Or same old white carpeting?
We've changed our floor.
Okay, so you have to worry about because Margie did not want that, medical food in the white carpeting. Anyways, my point again that I've said a number of times, you do what works for your family and what can, be best for everyone. So if everybody's happy, with who's mixing, keep it up. When is it mixed? And is it mixed when you want it or when you need it? Now, I love that conversation that was going, I think you asked about the formula with food or, before or after. Oh my gosh, when they go to camp, it is amazing the different ways the kids mix and drink their formula. There are the fresh drinkers. You guys maybe know some of these. They mix it, they drink it. And they want kind of lukewarm water, and it's fresh. That's how, and even with a little foam on top, they've got it down to a science. And then there are the cold drinkers. There's nothing, it almost can't be too cold. And they have to do it the night before and can wake up and it's very cold. So this is what I'm talking about. When is it mixed, and is it in the way the dad, the person who has to drink it really likes it. So if dad is mixing it, but he's doing it at night, and the kid likes it fresh, okay, something's gotta be worked out. And what is this mix, and is it okay with you? As kids grow older, their nutritional needs really change. Kath was talking about she used to be on this, and now she's on, when I first started in PKU, there were 2 formulas, and I think, Jonathan and Julia there was no options, this was it. But now there's so many different options or mixes that you can mix together to adjust for taste and calories and nutritional needs and volume. I think I heard a collective gasp go up when someone said, I think Leah said she only drinks 16 ounces a day, or it's even less, 12 ounces. Well, you know what? An infant can't drink only 12 ounces. We can't concentrate it to that level and have it safe for their bodies, but there are a lot of options. And at any one time, it might be good to review, is this a good option for you? And then how is it mixed? Are there some shortcuts? The first question almost when someone will walk in new to the office after being diagnosed with PKU is, do you have a blender? That was just part of the first day. Do you have a blender? Well, now, you don't need a blender, or you can use the hand mix, right? There's just a lot of different ways. And it's, if you can shorten that whole thing up. Kathy, are you in the shaker method? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it makes it really, how about Julie? Do you shake? You use a mixer. So there's a lot of ways. Just think if it's working. Evaluate it and go through it. But this is something that has to happen so often, you might as well make it as easy as possible for everyone involved. And then that whole baking, ordering thing, that's a whole other, almost everyday thing, or a good routine thing. When I was at Girl Scout camp, we would sing a song before meals that said, back of the bread is the flour, and back of the flour is the mill, and back of the mill is the wind and the rain and the Father's will. Well, with PKU, it's more like, back of the bread is the wheat starch flour, and back of the wheat starch flour is an order to dietary specialties, and back of the order, is a big, baking session to get all these things done. It's not just, having bread. And so just, are there some ways to streamline that? I think sometimes communication helps in all these things. And for that baking, ordering process, I know in my family, I have a grocery list pad, and sometimes as a parent, as your kids get older, you may not know that the last of the wheat starch was used, or the last of the mix. Is it mix quick or quick mix? Somebody said it wrong to me right away, and then I mix quick. Did somebody mix up their pancakes and use the last little bit and you don't know, or even, there's only 2 mornings left. Just a means of easy communication is good for that. Instead of going, bread's gone, and there's nothing left. So communication helps there. In Maine, I just spoke with a mom at their camp who did a pretty innovative thing. And this was a mom who's really, she has 3 kids, really seemed on top of things. And I thought she was one, who's doing her Saturday baking. She said, Linda, you know what? It got to be a lot for me this year. And she said, what I did is the very people who came to me 10 years ago when, Katie was just diagnosed and said, how can we help, kind of forgot to ask 10 years later how we can help. And she said, I had to swallow my pride, but I asked for help. And now about every quarter, they have baking days. She went to her church family, and they use their church kitchen. She orders a whole bunch of stuff. Some people help donate the special products, and they have quarterly baking days. There are some older ladies in the church that help out with this, some younger ones, some peers of the girl, and they bake like crazy and have a lot of things frozen and ready for that day-to-day basis. She said, it was so hard for me to admit that I needed this kind of help, but it has eased my way so much. So look around at those people who really love and care about you, and they typically want to help. And that might be, this might ease your way in this whole PKU thing. I just had one of those odd PKU connections. My sister was having a party at her house, a World Series party, and there was a woman who was so distraught because her coworker had to go in the hospital for 4 weeks, diagnosed with cancer, and the little girl had PKU. And as this woman was going to launch on what PKU, my sister was like, I know all about it because my sister hears me planning my camp things all the time. She said, let my sister call you. So this woman who lives just on the south side of Milwaukee is having any number of baking days arranged for her. Some people who are connected to PKU directly, and some are friends and coworkers. There are people really ready to help. So please tap into that for the baking mixing. One question that came in when I was asked to speak is, what happens in those day-to-day routines? Things are going along pretty well, and it applies mostly to toddlers and preschoolers. What happens when that child goes on strike? Either with the medical food or with food. There's a lot of things going on with toddlers. Toddlers are so different than infants, and those of you who are living through that know that. They're moving, for one thing. And in terms of what's happening physically, their growth is slowing down, so much more. The first year of life, how many pounds does that kid gain? 15 pounds? The second year of life, it might be more like 5. So the nutritional demands that a toddler has are much less than what you just recently experienced with an infant. And then when nutritional needs are less, the appetite follows suit. So this child is not going to be as hungry as he or she was, just a little while ago. So we have slow growth, we have decreased appetite, and we have this curious, demanding, contrary individual who would rather exert independence than eat. I can tell. I know this group right here. I know who to talk to right now. You know what? There's this wonderful God-given drive in us that's called hunger. And, growth and eating will win out in the day. So hang in there. Some clinics are big formula-first clinics. And I think that kind of relates to your question, where formula is offered first, and then food. You go, that doesn't work for me. Sometimes it doesn't work in the short run. It becomes a matter of the will sometimes, and it's a battle. Hang in there. That child will eat. They do not want to die. They want to eat. So, and then I think at those times the formula first mantra is a good one to have, and then have the food follow. Again, they will eat or drink eventually, but hang in there. I just want to take 1 minute to comment on that formula first. When I first heard that, I thought, that's a really great idea. Then the formula goes in, and it's just like what our panelists were talking about. And then I'm not as hungry for the other foods, but you know what? I guess I've just seen so many kids at camp who don't do that, and who are really managing beautifully. Or they drink their formula at totally different times of food. So I hate to be so dogmatic about something like formula first, except for toddlers, and then I think you can. And then I think that would be, you need to be as stubborn and as contrary as they are and stick to it, because it happens. And, it's a battle, but you'll win. Good routines, that's kind of all I was going to cover on day-to-day. You may interrupt with questions as you wish. Jim, how much time do I have?
You have 25 minutes.
Okay, we're good. Group outings are like a whole other thing that's outside of the day-to-day. I want to talk about those a little bit. Some of you with teenagers have got this down, but let's review. In your little package sheet, there's something called group grub. And boy, I hear people pontificate about, it's so nice to have social events that don't include food. I don't know what country that happens in. It would be nice if that's how it was here, but boy, oh boy. I mean, my son Andrew was on a soccer league. And it wasn't the traveling league, it wasn't the select league, it was the snack league. I mean, it was really, I mean, you can't, I'm amazed at where food shows up. And so, guys, that's the reality of our culture, and so let's adjust and figure out what we're going to do. There are always options. First option is to bring your own food, and many of you have worked that out. A second option, which seems so odd for many Americans, is not to eat. Don't eat. But it is an option that many of our older kids take very matter-of-factly, and they just don't. Maggie, we were in the pool at camp, we go to a water park pool, and Maggie has like the lowest tolerance in the world. And so she knows that when somebody else gets popcorn from the snack shop, she can't do it if she hopes to eat anything for supper. She didn't eat. Now, I grew up, my parents, products with a depression. If there is food, and especially if it's free, they want to eat it. And so it is a different kind of mentality. They don't even have to like it very much, but if it's free, it's got to be eaten. So I think just to learn that it's acceptable not to eat, and it's okay. Your child can have a wonderful time at an outing and not eat. They will learn that all-important thing. Every social event does not need to include food. Okay, what else can you do? Eat the yes foods or the free foods. Yes foods would be allowed foods that have some fee in them, and just turn down the no foods. So pick and choose, and that's very common to do. Bringing your own food implies a lot of pre-planning. Eating the yes foods that are there and foregoing everything else. You don't really have to plan for, except in your daily counting. You're not packing stuff up. So it's a good option, especially for teenagers who are notoriously spontaneous. Asking questions, and that's what we talked about before. Eating less speed the rest of the day, and I think we heard that from our panelists too. Oh, if I'm going to go out, I think Cass said that. If I'm going to go out, I'm going to eat low for breakfast and lunch. It means thinking differently than anybody else in the world, but it's become second nature, and it allows some more of that sociability with eating. And then being confident with the rehearsed responses. Anytime that these kids are in an eating situation, they're going to have to almost answer questions about food. I've seen the we talked about peer influences a little bit, and Jonathan had a great story about friends wanting to try. The other odd thing that happens with peers, I think especially in high school, what I've heard from high school girls, is that their friends in groups that know they're on a special diet play police. And they are on them. Have you had this, Kat, that your friends are on you? Can you eat that? Can you really eat that? Is that on your diet? And when the girls come to camp, they are so relaxed and free because nobody is asking them if that's on their diet. It's only food that's for them. And it's such a relief not to have that almost opposite peer pressure than you would expect. But it seems like those good friends are on their case and want them to stick with their diets. So food is talked about a lot. Was there a comment? Here, okay. One question that came up to me from the board was consequences to expect when not adhering to the diet. And it's hard to just say that in a single sentence. In infancy, the consequences of not following the diet are devastating. And I admire any young family that's here to learn, that's absolutely what has to happen. The diet needs to be followed because of this devastating brain damage that does happen. But what about when they get older? Some kids can feel that their levels are high. some parents can tell when children's parents are high. But it's a pretty subtle thing. And it's not like somebody starts, throwing up or feeling sick or, feeling really bad. And that subtlety is the really tough thing about PKU. But there are some things that are affected in the phenylalanine, either itself or whatever it's blocking from getting into the brain that the brain really needs, affects brain function. And they found it's in specific areas that are affected. And they group these different actions that the brain does together as executive function. As I say that, executive function. So it's things like concentration, being able to remember, organizing and planning work. Those kind of activities that the brain does are affected by high levels. Okay, when you think about a 10-year-old having to do a book report, what does this child have to do? They have to concentrate. They have to remember what they read. And then they have to, we have to do book report. My son has to do book reports. Once a month. And one of them is, dress like this. And you have to gather all these, you have to gather stuff and collect it and be organized. All these things that are needed just for a little book report are going to be affected by high phenylalanine levels. So you go, oh, okay, I got a C plus on the book report instead of a, whatever. It's subtle. But I would urge you to stay on top of the diet. Have your child drink that formula, preferably in more than 2 doses a day, optimally 3 to 4, to keep that brain functioning most optimally. Dr. Koch, who is like the grandfather of PKU, he's spoken here many times. And, I admire him so much, but when I look at his picture on the front of the National PKU News, and I know he's in his 80s, and I'm thinking, will you guys invite me back when I'm in my 80s? I don't know. Anyways, he has just lived PKU, and what he's done is a big follow-up study to the landmark collaborative study. And Jonathan, were you retested as part of that? So they called back individuals that were part of that study as children, and then did a number of studies on them, both for brain phenylalanine levels and what's going on in their life. And the people that have been off diet for a while, it's not all of them, but people who have been off diet for a number of decades in some cases have pretty significant problems. And this is very worrisome to me. One is recurrent headaches are reported much more frequently among people off diet. Phobias and other mental disturbances are reported much more frequently in people off the diet. And there's a subtle but significant decrease in IQ. It averages out to be about 1 IQ point per year of life off diet. Average IQ is about 100. If you're off diet for 2 decades, that individual could have an IQ of down to 80. And that means they no longer can do the same kind of work and thinking and activities that they did when their IQ was 100. So again, it's an impassioned plea to stay the course and keep it up. For those of you with really young kids, you may hear some of these veteran parents talking about the higher levels of their kids. This is not something that is typically a conscious decision. I call it PKU creep. It creeps. This fee creeps into your life, and you don't even know what's really happening. The formula intake creeps down, or it gets condensed to 1 big chug a day. This is not optimal treatment, but it happens subtly. And I guess some of these things that I talked about, if you can just get a heads up or just take some time to reflect on habits or things that have crept in that allows for more feed, it's not much, just a little, or less formula, look at those things. because it's just a subtle thing. No one intended for a certain child to have higher levels. So I have compassion for that because it's easy to happen, but reflect and think about where some changes could be made to optimize the life of your child. Are there any people, any parents here that have children with other metabolic conditions than PKU? MSED or arsenic acid? It's a PKU group. Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. We're getting there. Jim had asked me to maybe just reflect on how does PKU treatment compare to other conditions. I think for the sake of time, we'll skip that. Okay. When I was in high school, I was one of those good kids. And I used that, being a good kid, to open a lot of doors for me. So I expected, and this was in the 70s, rebellious decade, and so I expected by being good that I should get whatever I wanted to. And one time my parents were going to be in Chicago for the dental convention, and I had to drive to school. I needed to drive to school. I never drove to school. And half the kids that drove to school didn't get permission to drive to school. They just did. But I went to the vice principal and asked for permission to drive, and he said, no. I was appalled. And my next class was German class, and this was a beloved teacher of mine. And, I'm in there crying to Mr. Tallmeyer, I never did anything wrong, why? Only let me drive the car. I went and asked everything. So, lo and behold, by the next hour of class, Mr. Tallmeyer had worked things out for me, and I was driving to school. That was an example of when I needed an advocate. I needed someone to plead my case. I needed someone to do it with authority. And I needed someone to be that confident go-between. And this is what your children need you to do, too. They need you so often to be an advocate for them. It's amazing. It might be a school advocacy. It might be the school lunch people. It might be the insurance carrier. There are any number of times when you'll need to be an advocate for them. You'll need to plead their case. Now, how do you do that? Part of that is just, considering the options up front. There are usually many options. Well, more than two. Usually the person that you're, at odds with, and you each have an option, and sometimes there's really quite a few more. So try up front to figure out as many options as you can for being an advocate for your child. And get information. I think especially for the whole school lunch thing, that comes up on the listserv so often. And every school district in this country is under the same law. But how that is played out in any one school, it seems like it varies tremendously. But there are obligations. The same thing with insurance coverage and other things. So get all the information you can about what is happening, what someone will offer, and how to follow up on that. And then going to that party or group or individual and speaking with authority. And I think this is an easy place to be aggressive rather than assertive. Being a child of the 70s, we had all this assertiveness training when I was young. And I think assertiveness is basically knowing what you need, asking for what you need, and asking for it in a respectful way. So now you're acting as this go-between. But this is the pitfall so many of us fall into. We give way too much information, or we create a spectacle, or by being aggressive, we put others on the defensive, and then we do not promote our own cause. So I think being assertive, using, knowing what you need, asking for what you need, and doing it respectfully will open those doors for you. Then you're going to get a lot of practice at doing this, with being an advocate. But eventually, you want your child to become their own advocate, too. And so that means building confidence in that. And so I know I gain confidence in being an advocate from the success of others. And so I think it's really great that so many of you go to the camping weekends. You read those newsletters cover to cover because you go, oh, someone figured out how to do this and it worked. I can gain confidence from that. Going to the cooking classes, reading the newsletter are great ways to build your own confidence. And then having small personal successes. The first advocacy you do might not be the insurance carrier where you get it all solved. It might be just getting, some alternative food at a birthday party. And then allowing your child to see that. And then talking it through with your child what you just did. Now, because we can do things so often automatically, but by making it intentional and direct for them to go, oh, that's what mom did, or that's what dad did to make this happen. And then for all this advocacy, I'm going to be like Regis and say, use your lifelines. Use your, if you don't know what to do in a certain case, ask the audience. And I think your perfect big audience is that listserv. And so if you're on that, go ahead and ask. And I know there's sometimes troublesome things that happen on there, but overall I think it's a great audience to get some feedback about what you can do. Phone a friend, and this friend can have a child with PKU or not, but bounce off those ideas. And then eliminate some of your options. I just said check out your options, but eliminate, especially if you're trying to build confidence in your own child for making a decision. My Andrew has a lot of trouble making decisions. And so sometimes eliminating options help. So we just had Halloween last night. And so I said, what do you want to be for Halloween? He had no idea. All right, so then we eliminate options. Do you want to be scary or do you want to be, funny? Scary. Okay, we just knocked out a whole bunch of stuff. All right, scary. Do you want to be, frightening or bloody or, whatever. And so you can eliminate these options along the way and help your child learn in the decision making. Now, what I gave you a Halloween example. It might be that whole caring formula issue. That's a very hard thing to think through and make decisions about. I can take formula to school. I don't know. Okay, are you going to drink formula at lunch? No. Do you do? Okay, then we'll work it out with the nurse. But eliminating some of those options may help you get a clear path on what's going to be acceptable for you or your child. And I think just, again, being very intentional about passing those things on. Comments about peers, I think our panel gave us some good insights about what happens with peers. The whole peer influence changes as your child grows. I think what happens in grade school is almost just, early grade school at least, is that awareness that, oh, I'm eating a little different than everybody else. But it's kind of a matter-of-fact thing. It's not until those middle school years, which I think can be the clearest, where the true teasing for anybody who's different in any way. I mean, it can be braces, it can be glasses, it can be a weird haircut, it can be drinking formula, it can be having a bread that looks kind of white. So that's, and I think the outright pressure then to belong and to put the diet aside can be the strongest. And that's where your kid may not be looking to you either at that same time. Middle school years are tough. I think how you can help point out the real friends and really enable those friends to be an advocate and a help to your child. And then building confidence by planning, doing as much planning as you can. High school seems not to be the big problem that you might expect. There's peer influences, but they don't seem to be surrounding the diet. Parents of high schoolers, will you nod or go like this to me? High school is easier than middle school? Yeah. High school there, people are much more accepting of other kids, and it's kind of like, well, what are you drinking? Let me try it. But spontaneity is the name of the game in high school, and so planning for spontaneity, if you can do such a thing, I think it'd be very helpful. thinking through, okay, where are you going to be? You know, what can you get out of a vending machine? What can you get out of a quick mart? What can you, when you need to eat? And this happens on the way home from those track meets that went, 3 hours longer than you anticipated, and everybody's climbing out of the bus and what do you eat? And so it's planning for that unplanned is what I would recommend for parents of high schoolers. And then I think the other thing to really plan is how to work in the medical food in those really, really long days. The high school kids are busy and active from noon until from morning until way past dusk. So it's just not chugged once a day. How can you work these things in? Is something to pre-plan. Okay, Jim, where are we at now? 2 minutes. All right. In conclusion, we'll do that. There are a million things that I could tell you to do to be perfect parents. And we can't all do it. It's hard. It's a hard, hard job. But I think there are lots of systems here to help you do the best you can for you and for your child. Stay involved with your kids. And I read a ton of stuff. Now I'm reading Your Last Best Shot. And this is a parenting book, I'm grasping at my last strings here. Keep loving them. Keep other people in their lives who love them too, so that when you aren't the most effective and helpful person in their life, there is someone who can be. And just remember, you are not alone in this parenting game. And I think just looking around this room, you can sense that. And the listserv, the newsletter, and groups like this can ease your way in parenting with that added challenge of PKU.
Linda, thank you very much for the information.